The Russian Federation is at war with Ukraine, and many of its backers claim victory is certain, because Russia, they say, never loses wars. They cite its vast lands, harsh winters, huge manpower, and the people's willingness to suffer and die, and they recall past Russian triumphs. But let's test that belief and see what history really shows about Russia's record in war. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, you've likely heard endless debate about its military might, not just today, but across history. Some politicians and analysts argue Russia will prevail simply because they say it always has. To test that, we'll assume, as many Russians do, that the modern federation continues the legacy of earlier states based in what is now Western Russia, the Soviet Union, the Russian Empire, the Tsardom, and Muscovy. Many Russians also trace their roots back to Kievan Rus, the medieval Viking-founded Eastern Slavic realm, a heritage Ukrainians and Belarusians also claim. These powers did win many major conflicts: the 13th century defeat of the Teutonic Knights, the Great Northern War against Sweden in the early 1700s, multiple victories over the Ottomans, Napoleon's failed 1812 invasion, and the USSR's triumph over Nazi Germany in World War II, often with allies, but still wins nonetheless. Yet success in some wars doesn't mean a state can't lose others. So let's explore cases that challenge the myth of Russia's eternal invincibility. Starting with Kievan Rus. Mongol invasion of Kievan Rus in 1237. Batu Khan's Mongol horde invaded the Rus' lands. The princes of Kievan Rus had fought the Mongols before but stayed divided. And even united, they couldn't match the Mongols' superior numbers, leadership, and tactics. The invaders ravaged northeastern Rus', modern Russia, then swept through the southwest, modern Ukraine, destroying Kiev. Chroniclers mourned, "Who will not weep at such ruin?" At so many Orthodox souls lost, so many princes slain, Kievan Rus vanished as a state. Its remnants, including Muscovy, became Mongol vassals for over 2 centuries. Livonian War 3 centuries later, Muscovy had grown into a strong state, the Tsardom of Russia. In the 1550s, Tsar Ivan the Terrible sought access to the Baltic by attacking weak Livonia. His armies conquered much of it, but Poland, Lithuania, and Sweden intervened. Poland and Lithuania united into a commonwealth and drove Russia back, even besieging Pskov. Meanwhile, Ivan's crushing war taxes wrecked the economy, and Tatar raids reached Moscow. By 1583, he was forced to surrender all gains and more. As one chronicler wrote, Ivan seized foreign land briefly but lost his own, and twice as many of his people died. The defeat helped trigger the Time of Troubles. From 1598 to 1613, Russia plunged into chaos. Sweden and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth intervened, backing rival factions, grabbing territory, and even placing a Polish prince on the Russian throne. Polish forces seized Moscow, Swedes took Novgorod, and Russia all but collapsed. Prince Dmitry Kоворostinin wrote, "Nations rose against us. Our land ruined by many enemies, and no one knew how to fight them." Only in 1612 did Russian militias recapture Moscow, but the damage lasted over a century, Third and Fourth Coalition Wars. During the Napoleonic era, Russia's 1812 victory over France is legendary, but earlier campaigns were disasters. In 1805 at Austerlitz, Napoleon crushed the joint Russian-Austrian army. Tsar Alexander reportedly sighed, "We are all children in the hands of a giant." In 1807 at Friedland, Russia again suffered a major defeat and sued for peace. Officer Denis Davidov despaired. Constant retreats, chaos after Friedland, lack of supplies, and the belief Napoleon was invincible. The Treaty of Tilsit forced Russia to ally with France until their inevitable split in 1812. Crimean War. In 1853, Russia attacked the Ottoman Empire, hoping to expand at its expense, but France, Britain, and Sardinia intervened to stop it. Russian troops were driven from the Balkans, failed in Anatolia, and faced invasion in Crimea, territory it had taken from the Ottomans 70 years earlier. The empire's weakness was exposed. It couldn't mobilize troops effectively or find a capable commander. Rewritten faithfully, same tone, content, and pacing, but more concise and smoother in flow. The skill of the Finnish army and the spirit of its people. The Red Army's slow progress, high casualties, and repeated blunders shocked the world. Although the Soviets eventually forced Finland to sign the Treaty of Moscow in March 1940, ceding some border regions and the Karelian Isthmus, Finland's resistance became legendary. The Soviet Union won land but lost prestige. Public discontent during the Crimean War. Russia's inability to expel the Allied forces from Crimea wasn't the only issue. Public frustration with corruption, poor governance, and low living standards also weakened the empire from within. Russian journalist Alexei Koshelev captured the mood. The Allied landings in Crimea in 1854, the battles of Alma and Inkerman, and the siege of Sevastopol did not disturb us too much, for we believed that even Russia's defeat would be better and more beneficial than the state of affairs then. The public mood, even among the unthinking masses, was the same. Russo-Japanese War. Half a century later, in the early 1900s, a new rival rose in Asia, Imperial Japan. Both empires competed for dominance in Manchuria and Korea. Russia had large garrisons and a fleet stationed at Port Arthur, but in 1904, Japan launched a surprise attack and began the Russo-Japanese War. Japan scored stunning victories at Yalu River and Mukden, and annihilated Russia's Baltic fleet at Tsushima, one of the most lopsided naval battles in history. Russian officer Anton Denikin described the chaos at Mukden. Small groups of soldiers ran in confusion, trying to find a way out of the trap. The entire field was covered with abandoned carts, luggage, and riderless horses. For the first time, I saw panic. The crushing defeat abroad sparked revolution at home. The 1905 uprising forced Tsar Nicholas II to accept reforms and end the war. Negotiator Sergei Witte reflected, "Without this miserable war, the government could have resisted public will by police force. But the war laid bare the heart of the regime. Such sacrifices do not go in vain." In the Treaty of Portsmouth, Russia conceded defeat. Japan took over Russian railways in Manchuria, gained dominance in Korea, and received South Sakhalin. World War I and the Russian Civil War. Less than a decade later, Russia again faced collapse. Entering World War I in 1914 to defend Serbia and assert its power in the Balkans, the empire quickly suffered massive losses. Despite some early successes against Austria-Hungary, defeats at Tannenberg, the Great Retreat, and Lake Narach devastated morale. By 1917, the economy was in ruins, and revolution overthrew the Tsar. The new provisional government tried to keep fighting but failed. When the Bolsheviks seized power that November, Lenin prioritized peace at any cost. The 1918 Treaty of Brest-Litovsk marked total defeat. Russia ceded Finland, the Baltics, Poland, and Ukraine. Menshevik Fyodor Dan lamented, "The Peace of Brest did not free revolutionary Russia. It turned her from a participant into a powerless victim." Civil war followed between the Bolsheviks and the White Movement. The Reds prevailed, and their state became the Soviet Union, claiming to inherit Russia's historical legacy. Polish-Soviet War. While still fighting the Civil War, Bolshevik Russia clashed with newly independent Poland in 1919. With the fall of the Central Powers, the borderlands of Belarus and Ukraine were up for grabs. The Poles and their Ukrainian allies captured Kyiv, but Soviet counterattacks pushed them to the gates of Warsaw. There, Poland won a shocking victory, the miracle on the Vistula, forcing the Red Army to retreat. Lenin later admitted, had Poland become Soviet, the Versailles system would have collapsed. Instead, Free Poland survived, and in the 1921 Treaty of Riga, Moscow gave up claims to large parts of modern Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania. The hoped-for spread of communist revolution into Europe ended there. Winter War. Less than 20 years later, Stalin sought to retake Finland for security reasons and install a friendly regime. The Winter War of 1939-1940 proved disastrous for Soviet prestige. Though vastly outnumbered, Finnish forces used their terrain, tactics, and willpower to inflict massive Soviet losses. The USSR eventually forced Finland to cede some territory, but Helsinki stayed independent. The campaign revealed severe Red Army weaknesses, lessons that would soon prove vital when Nazi Germany invaded. Even Stalin himself later acknowledged the Finns' remarkable courage and skill. Resistance. You live God knows where, in swamps and forests, yet you've built a nation. You've fought for your state relentlessly. Compare Finland, for instance, to Belgium. The Belgians are considered one of Europe's most cultured peoples, yet when war erupted, they surrendered. I believe that if the Finns had been in Belgium's place, they would have fought stubbornly against the German invaders. Rentola, Soviet-Afghan War. The Soviet Union's final foreign war also ended in defeat, though a Russian general recently argued the USSR never actually lost it. In 1979, Moscow invaded Afghanistan after a rebellion threatened the communist regime in Kabul. The Soviets replaced it with a new socialist government, and for a decade, Red Army troops fought the Mujahideen rebels, who received U.S. weapons. Over time, the Mujahideen gained more victories against the Red Army and the fragile Afghan government, though both insurgents and civilians endured heavy losses. Many Soviet officers, like Airborne Colonel Yuri Lapshin, recognized the war was unwinnable. There is a total incapacity among the troops and leadership to fight, even when they vastly outnumber and outgun the foe. Infighting destroys the already feeble attempts to stabilize the front. In northern Afghanistan, the enemy conducts active operations, while elsewhere, joint opposition councils rise and propaganda expands. And considering all this, the only logical outcome is withdrawal. Lapshin. The Soviets finally pulled out in 1989. The Afghan socialist regime soon collapsed, and a few years later, the Taliban seized control. The failure in Afghanistan helped unravel the weakening Soviet system, hastening its fall in 1992. Some might see this disastrous end to the Cold War as a Russian defeat too, but we'll stick to hot wars today. First Chechen War in 1994, the new Russian Federation fought a war on its own soil. The First Chechen War began when Russian troops entered Chechnya, legally part of Russia, to overthrow the separatist Chechen Ichkerian Republic. Chechen fighters inflicted devastating losses on Russian forces, and although Moscow killed the Chechen president and seized Grozny, the rebels retook the city in a stunning victory. Repeated ambushes, mass hostage crises, and poor battlefield performance forced a ceasefire in 1996 and a peace deal in 1997. Russian forces withdrew, failing to reassert control over Chechnya. It was the Federation's first military defeat, though it would later prevail in the Second Chechen War. These cases, cherry-picked from a much longer list of defeats, give us a clear conclusion. Like any other power, large or small, Russia has never been invincible in war. From Kievan Rus' and Muscovy to the Tsardom Empire and Soviet Union, victories were many, but defeats equally real. Whether today's Russian Federation will triumph in its war against Ukraine remains uncertain, but history suggests victory is never guaranteed. My work with real-time history often means traveling, from my home in Vienna to our studio in Berlin, to battlefields, museums, and beyond. I always need reliable connectivity, but I don't want to pay absurd roaming charges or risk shady SIM cards. That's why I use Saily, a global eSIM service designed for travelers who want seamless internet abroad. It offers hundreds of flexible data plans across 180-plus countries. Before your trip, simply install the Saily app on your eSIM-compatible phone. When you arrive, choose an affordable plan that fits your destination and say goodbye to roaming fees. If your travels cross several countries, like my routes between Austria and Germany, you can get a regional plan and save even more. No SIM swaps, no stress. Plus, here's a bonus. Get an exclusive 15% discount on Saily data plans. Just download the Saily app, enter code RealTimeHistory at checkout, or visit https://saily.com realtimehistory. Stay connected securely and smoothly wherever you go. Special thanks to Sofia Shirogorova for her assistance with this episode. If you'd like to explore more of the Russian campaigns we discussed, check out our documentaries. Here on Real-Time History and on our sister channel, The Great War, you'll find in-depth works like our 3-hour film on Napoleon's 1812 invasion of Russia, or our video on the Polish-Soviet War. Links are in the description below. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this has been a production of Real-Time History, the only channel that dares to imagine an alternate world where Finland and Belgium trade places.